guys, this is the 5th episode of The Best of Iggy, where I think we're going to be able to finish it up this time. It'll be a little bit of a long one, but we're going to do it because we are on chapter 15. So if you are just seeing the books about Iggy for the first time, you've missed a lot and you're going to want to go back to the other videos. You need to watch 1, 2, 3, and 4 because this is number 5. Okay? Here we go with chapter 15. It's called Bundle Up. It was hard to concentrate that afternoon. Luckily, Iggy didn't have to concentrate much in math. Math was pretty easy. Bundling, which Miss Schulberger was teaching that afternoon, was especially easy. Ones, tens, hundreds. 10 ones is the same as 1 10. 10 tens is the same as 100. What's not to get? Something, apparently, because a lot of people didn't get it. Some people, like Donald, never got anything, but even people, like Anaya, who normally got everything, didn't get bundling. Let's think about money, people, said Miss Schulberger. She turned to the whiteboard. Iggy tensed, but it was only the second time she'd turned. The third time was the starting flag. Remember, they're going to raise their desks. Miss Schulberger faced the class. When we had 10 pennies, we exchanged them for 1 dime, right? She nodded hopefully. Now look at our place value columns. If you have 10 dimes, what can we exchange them for? 100 pennies, said Anaya, which was true, but not what Miss Schulberger wanted to hear. Iggy knew that what she wanted to hear, 10 dimes are the same as $1. Normally, he would have raised his hand, but he couldn't raise his hand because he had to keep his arms under his desk so he could start desk racing the instant she turned for the 3rd time. He glanced at Skylar, who was looking at him. Loser, mouthed Skylar. He glanced at Owen, who was leaning back in his chair. Owen would never win. He was slow. He glanced at Arch. Arch looked back at him and nodded like, I'm going to beat you. Also, the same as 100, Miss Schulberger was saying. So look, if I bundle my tens into groups of 10, what do they become? She whirled around to the whiteboard to draw bundles. 3, said Skylar. Putsy, yelled Owen. Arch and Iggy zoomed forward in their desks. Skylar didn't yell, he just zoomed. Miss Schulberger turned around to see 4 desks blasting toward her at warp speed. Iggy charged as fast as he could. He was laughing and driving and making car squealing sounds, so he only glimpsed Miss Schulberger's face in the very last second before he reached her. And in that very last second, Iggy thought, this was a bad idea. He's not wrong. Ah! Miss Schulberger screamed. Oh my goodness, look at that mess. More mess. Everybody's falling on the floor. Chapter 16. Bad, bad, bad. I'm sorry, Iggy said for the 50th or 60th or 90th time. He swallowed. I'm really, really sorry. He was saying it to the school secretary. Why the school secretary? Because the principal was in Miss Schulberger's class teaching it. Because Miss Schulberger had to go home. Because Iggy had A, run into her knee, and B, scared her, and C, made her cry. Iggy felt terrible. He had never felt as terrible as he did then. He cried he felt so terrible. When Miss Schulberger screamed and he bashed into her because he couldn't stop, and then Owen, who came in second surprisingly, had crashed into him, making him bash into Miss Schulberger again, and she had fallen over holding her knee, he had cried. He had started apologizing then, but no one could understand him because he was crying. Also, no one could hear him over all the yelling. After a minute of everyone yelling, Arden and Cicely ran to get the principal, and after that, Iggy couldn't stand thinking about it. 3 firefighters came in with their big first aid cases, and even a stretcher. And then the biggest firefighter said, how did this happen? And Lainey, who was the nicest girl in the class, looked at Iggy with hatred and pointed her finger and said, he did it. I'm sorry, Iggy cried. You should be, said the biggest firefighter. Iggy groaned, thinking about it. And then Iggy was sent to the office, along with Arch and Owen, who were also crying, and Skylar, who had never cried in his entire life. Walking there, Iggy was embarrassed that he had cried so much, and a year later he was more embarrassed about crying in front of everyone than he was about crashing into Putsy. But 10 years later, he thought that crying was probably the only reason he wasn't expelled from 4th grade. Chapter 17. What happened to Iggy when he got home? I don't want to talk about it. And all I'm going to say about it is this. It took a year. Chapter 18. The end. This is not the end of the book. It's only the end of number 3. The thing that we wish we had not done at all. Neither Miss Schulberger nor Iggy went to school the next day. Miss Schulberger because she was resting her knee. Iggy because he was suspended. The day after that, Iggy went back. He wished he didn't have to. He thought about running away to Ketchum, Idaho. And then he thought about his mom and decided not to. He went to school and everyone looked at him hatingly, except for Arch and Owen and Diego, who looked at him sympathetically. And Skylar, who looked at him the way he always did, like he'd never seen him before in his life. But Miss Schulberger wasn't there. She was still resting her knee. Iggy thought the worst was over. Iggy was wrong. The worst was the next day when Miss Schulberger came back. She came back with Mr. Schulberger, who was even bigger than the big firefighter and had a long blonde ponytail and a beard. He helped Miss Schulberger into a chair and squeezed her arm. Then he said, "Which one is he?" Miss Schulberger smiled and shook her head at him. "Which one of you is Iggy?" asked Mr. Schulberger. Iggy didn't raise his hand, but everyone else helpfully pointed at him. Mr. Schulberger marched like a big blonde giant across the classroom to Iggy. He leaned down and said, very softly in Iggy's ear, "Don't ever do that again." "I'm sorry," said Iggy. "You should be," said Mr. Schulberger, just like the firefighter. "Jack," said Miss Schulberger. "Goodbye." She waved at him. He went away. Iggy didn't make a sound all morning. He kept his eyes down and his hands to himself. It almost killed him. When the recess bell went, he jumped to his feet, wanting like crazy to tear out of the room. But he didn't. He waited until all the other kids had gone out, except Arden, who was a kiss-up and always staying inside until Miss Schulberger made her leave. "Off you go, Arden," said Miss Schulberger. "Iggy and I are having a talk." Arden trailed away, looking hatingly over her shoulder at Iggy. "I'm sorry," said Iggy. Miss Schulberger nodded. Iggy opened his lift-top desk and took out the things he had brought. The first was a drawing he had made. It was very embarrassing. It was a flower. Below the flower it said, "Get well soon," and "I'm sorry." The second was a letter in it, and in it he had written, "I'm sorry," 100 times, then an equal sign, then "I'm sorry" in 10 groups of 10. He had circled each group and written "bundling" on the side in case she didn't get it. The third thing was a bag containing candy bars and that he had bought with his own money, plus some other candy left over from Halloween. He gave all these things to Miss Schulberger. "I'm sorry," he said. "Why did you do it, Iggy?" she asked. "What, the race?" "I don't know." Miss Schulberger said nothing, and Iggy thought maybe he should try to explain it better. "I thought it would be funny." Miss Schulberger looked up quickly. "Not to hit you," Iggy said. "That wasn't what I thought was going to happen. We were just using you for the finish line. I didn't think we'd hit you." "Well, of course you were going to hit me. You were aiming for me." "But really, Iggy, my question is, why were you aiming for me? I thought we got along." "We do. We aimed for you because..." Iggy couldn't remember why. "I don't know. We just thought it would be fun." Her eyes got narrower. "What's Putsy?" "You," muttered Iggy. "Why?" Iggy looked up in astonishment. How could she not know? "Because of your car. It's a putt-putt car." Miss Schulberger blinked at him, and then she smiled. "Oh, Iggy, you're a nut." Iggy laughed. "Well, so are you. Sometimes we call you Putsy the Nutsy." "Don't call me that." "I'm sorry," he said quickly, but she was smiling. "I wish I hadn't banged into you," he said. "Me too," she said, rubbing her knee. "I'm going to try hecka hard not to do anything bad for the rest of the year," said Iggy. "That would be nice," she said. "I probably won't make it," he said. He didn't make it. Chapter 19, Extenuating Circumstances, Part 3. Officially, extenuating circumstances are things that happen before the person does the bad thing. They are pieces of information that explain why someone did the bad thing. So officially, there are no extenuating circumstances for Iggy's desk racing incident. Miss Schulberger moving him to Orange doesn't count. It's nothing at all like not eating for 2 days. Iggy was the one who discovered desk driving. Iggy was the one who suggested charging Miss Schulberger when her back was turned. Iggy was the one who called it a race. Why did he do those things? Not even Iggy could tell you why. All he could say was, I thought it would be funny. That is not an extenuating circumstance. But unofficially, I think we can say that Iggy's sorriness became an extenuating circumstance. He felt so bad about what he had done that he actually made it better. Of course, this wouldn't have been extenuating if he had broken Miss Schulberger's kneecap, but her knee was okay by the next week, and he drew her a picture of a flower, and he wrote, I'm sorry, 200 times in bundles. All of this made Miss Schulberger know that Iggy was really truly sorry. Even years later, when Iggy thought of the moment Miss Schulberger turned and saw him and screamed, he felt bad. That's how sorry he was. That's extenuating, isn't it? I hope so. The end. That was the first book in the new series, The Best of Iggy, by Annie Barrows. What did you think? We might have to do another one soon. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you very soon, and I love you very much.